All women are different, but they are all women. This video is androcentric from a men's point of view and is presented as opinion, commentary, and debate. Expressing opinions is not violence. These are ideas to challenge, question, and argue in public, because classical liberalism relies on the First Amendment for its dialectic. If you are a feminist, then consider this. If patriarchy truly existed as claimed, feminism could not. And if all men are trash and women are equal to men, then what are we to conclude? Women will die for their children. Men will die for their wives and children, and God chose to die for all mankind. Authority rolls up with responsibility. If this framing of facts offends you, click off to a cute cat video. Proceeding further will expose you to gamma bias and criticism directed at ideas, claims, institutions, not at any individual's virtue or dignity. Our method follows the 7 liberal arts, the trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy, and the transcendentals, the good, true, and beautiful. If this framework is not for you, feel free to exit now. It's no disgrace. Women are wonderful. God bless America. Men are great. Feminismus delendus est. The Definitive Guide to the Manosphere, Rise of the Titans, written by Conrad Riker. Available now, links in description. The Definitive Guide to the Manosphere, a field guide for men who still notice reality, steeping in madness. The left's war on reality, how feminists turned hot water into hate speech, trade shows into tyranny, and common sense into a crime against Western civilization. There is a special circle of hell reserved for those who confuse a cup of tea with the collapse of civilization, and Dr. Winona appears to be its architect. She calls it thermal fascism. I call it a semantic hallucination, born of an intellect too sterile to grasp the chaos of reality. By her logic, the act of brewing herbs, applying heat and time to extract flavor, is a microaggression, a liquid extraction of feminine vitality. This is the apex of gamma bias, the desperate anthropomorphizing of inanimate objects to claim victimhood status for the oppressor class. She inflates the meaning of a tea bag to that of a sentient being, while deflating the status of the men who mine the coal to boil the water. This is not dialectic, it is a tantrum disguised as theory. She frames the patience required for steeping as submission, a psychological projection so potent it could power a small city. In the Western tradition, patience is a cardinal virtue, a rung on the ladder of self-mastery, not a symptom of patriarchal submission. To rewrite the laws of thermodynamics as a tool of oppression is to admit that your ideology has lost its grip on the physical world. While Dr. Winona weeps for the dignity of a sachet of dried leaves, she engages in a magic trick of moral asymmetry, distracting you from the actual discrete violence happening in the real world. She wields chronology as a gated community, claiming secret insight into the hidden violence of hot water, while ignoring the blood-soaked pavement of male disposability. Where is her empathy for the men who constitute 93% of workplace fatalities? Where is the thermal pause for the fathers who are asset-stripped in family courts, reduced to ATM machines by a gynocentric state that enforces duty without granting authority? She invents a crisis of thermal fascism to obscure the reality of the 4 horsemen of the manosphere: the empathy gap, gamma bias, male disposability, and responsibility without authority. The true violence here is not the steeping of tea, it is the destruction of due process, the silencing of dissent through sanction, and the relentless psychological warfare against the masculine spirit. She screams about the fascism of a teabag to justify the actual fascism of cancel culture, where a man's livelihood is destroyed because he refuses to bow to the latest neologism of the neo-Marxist death cult. This is the cancerous ideological possession we must excise. It is an autoregressive loop of grievance. Stay RS, victim, plus feeling, discomfort, equals sanction, right to rewrite reality. They demand we look at the world through a lens of feeling as truth, abandoning the trivium and the rigorous pursuit of objective fact. But we are the heirs of Aristotle, not the children of Alice in Wonderland. We will not steep in complicity. We will use the scalpel of logic to dissect their absurdities. In the following pages, we will dismantle her cathedral of spite exposing the trade show not as a temple of greed, but as the modern agora, a place of meritocratic exchange that the resentful leftist cannot abide. We will expose the selfless mother myth as a wedge designed to sever the family unit and deliver children to the state. Brace yourself, we are about to break the spell.
Buncombe article by a feminist PhD. Article plan: The discrete violence of the thermal pause. Propaganda axes deployment. Status. Position the author. Me, Dr. Wynona, and the target audience as morally superior arbiters of justice, while framing the target's men, capitalists, traditional structures as inherently morally compromised and requiring re-education or suppression. Kino Ld.E. Claim access to hidden, esoteric knowledge, e.g. the thermal pause, cultural Marxism, feminist theory, that is identity-gated, only the oppressed can truly understand it. Male capitalist dissent is framed as ignorance or gaslighting. Meaning, effreet the meaning of everyday objects, herbal tea, feedback loops, trade shows, into symbols of oppression and control. Steep equals subservience, trade show equals temple of greed. Feeling, moralize the audience's feelings. Their anxiety is a symptom of systemic oppression. Their empathy is a weapon to be directed at the designated victims. Guilt is a virtue signal. Duty. Impose a unilateral duty on the oppressor class, men capitalists, to submit, yield resources, and accept blame. The audience's duty is to enforce this through social pressure. Power. Abstract power away from reality, who actually holds economic political power, and reframe it as a mystical force held by the oppressor, justifying any countermeasures by the powerless. Sanction. Threaten social ostracization, professional destruction, and shaming for any who disagree or fail to comply with the new ideology. Immunity. Build self-sealing arguments. Any criticism of the article or its premises is proof of the critic's bigotry and need for further silencing. Article structure and elements. Introduction. The neologism introduced thermal fascism. Frame the act of brewing herbal tea not as relaxation, but as a micro-fascist ritual of resource extraction and hidden labor. Theory 1. Ethics as compliance. Object herbal tea sachets. Rebrand steeping as submission. The tea bag is a victim. Connect this to corporate compliance checklists, hollow gestures masking exploitation. Theory 2. Custodians of reputation. Object trade shows. Trade shows as arenas of toxic masculine display. Women, as emotional laborers, must police the reputations of these brutes. Frame this burden as an injustice. Theory 3. The selfless mother myth. Object feedback loops. How the patriarchy uses mother's love to extract unpaid labor. The feedback loop of guilt and duty. Conclusion, praxis, call to action, a new slogan. Steep in rebellion, not complicity. The final demand for ideological purity. Drafting key phrases, concepts to weave in. Recursive interaction of oppression. Asymmetric status dynamics. The liquid extraction of feminine vitality. Algorithmic heteronormativity. The four riders of the patriarchy. Let the words flow.
The alchemy of grievance, deconstructing thermal fascism and the semantics of madness. Truth is the first casualty of war, observed Aeschylus in 458 BC, and what we witness today is nothing less than total war against reality itself. I hold before me an article titled The Discrete Violence of the Thermal Pause by one Dr. Wynona, a piece so profoundly deranged that it would qualify as satire if its author possessed even a scintilla of self-awareness. The good doctor has discovered thermal fascism, which apparently manifests when a man has the audacity to dip a tea bag into hot water. Yes, gentlemen, the simple act of brewing herbal tea, practiced by monks in cloisters, samurai in tea ceremonies, and philosophers in study chambers for millennia, is now patriarchal violence. This is not merely stupid. It is deliberately stupid, manufactured with the cold precision of a semantic weapon. Let us examine the category error at the heart of this lunacy. Dr. Wynona anthropomorphizes a tea sachet, a lifeless collection of dried leaves encased in porous paper, as a victim of submission and resource extraction. This represents the gamma bias in its purest crystallized form, the desperate search for victims where none exist. Consider the actual supply chain behind that tea bag. Men in Sri Lanka harvest those leaves under brutal sun, performing backbreaking physical labor for wages that would make a Western feminist faint. Men built the ships and trucks that transported them. Men engineered the packaging, constructed the factories, maintained the electrical grids powering the production lines. Where is Dr. Wainona's empathy for those human beings? The empathy gap strikes with razor-sharp exactitude. A tea bag deserves compassion, but the men whose sweat made that tea possible are invisible. This is not moral reasoning. It is moral inversion, a hall of mirrors where objects have feelings and human beings are reduced to oppressor constructs. The Western tradition gave us the trivium, grammar, logic, and rhetoric, the foundational apparatus of clear thought. Dr. Wainona's article bypasses the first two stages entirely, serving only rhetoric as psychological manipulation. This is diatribe, not dialectic. Dialectic requires a genuine opponent, a meeting of minds in pursuit of truth through logical disputation. Diatribe has no interest in dialogue. It monologues at you, demanding submission while preemptively declaring all dissent as evidence of your moral corruption. When the writer speaks of recursive interaction of oppression, she is not describing reality, she is casting a spell, inducing a trance state where critical faculties dissolve before the hypnotic rhythm of neologistic nonsense. The ideological possession on display here is complete. The writer has become a mouthpiece for forces she does not understand, repeating ritual phrases without awareness of their function or origin. The article deploys epistemic gating with the precision of a Jesuit inquisitor. Only the initiated, those who have swallowed the red pill equivalent of cultural Marxism, can perceive the hidden violence lurking in a cup of chamomile. If you, a rational man, object that tea brewing is simply the application of heat to botanical matter to extract flavor compounds, your objection proves your ignorance. This is the self-sealing immunity strategy. The critique validates the theory. It is unfalsifiable by design, immune to correction, hermetically sealed against reality. Karl Popper identified this structure as the hallmark of pseudoscience in 1934. It remains the structural backbone of all leftist ideology today. They have built an intellectual castle with no doors. Nobody can enter to challenge them, and nobody inside can escape to verify their claims against the world. Natural law recognizes that transformation through fire and water constitutes the very basis of civilization. Cooking, metallurgy, chemistry, sanitation, all require harnessing thermodynamic processes to alter matter for human flourishing. Prometheus stole fire from the gods to gift humanity its first technology. Now Dr. Wainona declares that fire itself is patriarchal oppression. The liquid extraction of feminine vitality, she bewails, is thermodynamics reframed through the paranoid lens of Marxist extraction theory. In the leftist worldview, all transactions are zero-sum. If one party gains, another must have lost. This intellectual virus has now infected physics itself. When hot water draws flavor from leaves, the leaves have been exploited. One wonders how Dr. Wainona survives digestion without filing a grievance against her own stomach acid for colonizing her nutrients. The semantic inflation on display would be comical if its consequences were not so catastrophic. Violence once meant physical force causing bodily harm. Now it means brewing tea incorrectly. Trauma described life-threatening events that shattered psychological integration. Now it means hearing opinions you dislike. Fascism referred to a specific political ideology merging corporate and state power under ultranationalist dictatorship. Now it means anything a man does that a woman finds inconvenient. This inflation serves a strategic purpose. When every annoyance becomes violence and every disagreement becomes fascism, actual violence and actual fascism become impossible to identify or resist. The language itself is weaponized against truth, stripped of precision, rendered into emotional clubs for bludgeoning dissidents. Behold the anti-syllogism of steeping, a logical structure so absurd that Aristotelian categories weep in their graves. Dr. Winona's reasoning proceeds thus. Major premise, extraction of flavor requires heat and time. Minor premise, some humans have historically extracted labor from other humans. Conclusion, therefore, steeping tea is morally equivalent to slavery. This fails at every level of formal logic. The tea bag lacks agency, consciousness, and the capacity for suffering, attributes sine qua non for victimhood status. The category of extraction has been stretched so broadly that it encompasses both voluntary economic exchange and brutal chattel slavery, between which no moral distinction can now be made. This is not reasoning, it is reason's corpse, propped up and puppeted for ideological theater. The phrase thermal fascism demands close linguistic inspection. Fascism comes from the Latin fasces, the bundle of rods carried by Roman lictors representing the state's power to punish. It specifically marked the fusion of state and corporate power under totalitarian nationalism. Dr. Winona has shrunk this word to a mere sound, a noise signaling tribal membership lacking semantic substance. Thermal merely refers to heat. Merging them creates not definition but emotional release, a high-sounding expression raising its speaker to the position of visionary while reducing her subject to the position of oppressor. This neologism operates as a status play, plain and simple. Dr. Winona claims intellectual dominance for having spotted a variant of persecution unseen by the general public, while regular people transform into villains for the offense of brewing coffee. Most revealing is the psychological projection embedded in the phrase steeping as submission. In the Western apprenticeship mastery tradition, still preserved in craftsmen, martial artists, and scholars, patience is a virtue. Learning requires sustained attention over time. Mastery demands years of humble repetition. Steeping tea embodies this wisdom. You cannot rush the process without destroying the result. Dr. Winona reframes patience as submission, casting self-discipline as humiliation. This reveals far more about her psychology than about tea. She cannot conceive of voluntary delay, of purposeful waiting, of the quiet mastery involved in allowing processes to unfold. Everything must be immediate gratification, or it is oppression. This is the infantile narcissism that characterizes the entire leftist project, the tantrum of a civilization-scaled toddler demanding that reality conform to desire instantly. The article's opening claims to expose discrete violence, yet everything about its structure constitutes actual violence against meaning, logic, and truth. We may map it precisely onto the recursive loop of manufactured grievance, status, Dr. Winona as victim prophet, plus feeling, her aesthetic discomfort with brewing rituals, equal sanction, the right to redefine reality for everyone else. This creates a perpetual motion machine of complaint. No solution is possible because the problem is existence itself, the irreducible fact that matter requires transformation to serve human needs. Dr. Winona's ideology cannot be satisfied. It can only spread, consuming every domain of life until even the most trivial activities become battlegrounds in her imaginary war. Gentlemen, I present to you the endpoint of genocentrism unmoored from all restraint. A worldview wherein a tea bag has moral status and you do not. Where the tireless labor of men across centuries is invisible, but the momentary feelings of a pampered academic constitute cosmic injustice. Where language itself has been so thoroughly corrupted that communication becomes impossible. This is not an intellectual position to be debated. It is a pathology to be diagnosed, rejected, and replaced with the recovered wisdom of our civilization. Brew your tea in peace, and recognize the thermal fascism accusation as what it truly is, the desperate cry of an ideology that must fabricate victims because it cannot survive contact with actual reality. But do not mistake this semantic flatulence for mere stupidity. It is a strategic weaponization of the feeling axis to dismantle the feedback loops of competence. This thermal pause rhetoric is the philosophical malware installed into the operating system of the Western corporation, turning the duty of productivity into the crime of extraction. When the leftist redefines the laws of physics as violence, they justify the actual discrete violence of the administrative state, the firing, the deplatforming, and the destruction of men who refuse to bow to the irrational. The safety they demand is not physical security, but the immunity of the incompetent from the judgment of the market. This feedback loop of guilt does not stop at the teacup. It slithers into the boardroom and the trade show, where the Cathedral of Spite erects its altars to sacrifice male excellence on the pyre of hurt feelings. The Cathedral of Spite, trade shows, corporate vampirism, and the war on male competence. The safest road to hell is the gradual one, the gentle slope, soft underfoot, without sudden turnings, without milestones, without signposts. C.S. Lewis warned us about the subtle descent into the abyss, but he could never have predicted the sheer, unadulterated absurdity of the abyss arriving in a recyclable hemp sachet. I am looking at a document titled The Discrete Violence of the Thermal Pause, and I must confess, it takes a special kind of intellectual dementia to look at a cup of peppermint tea and see the specter of fascism. This is the height of the left's semantic inflation, inflating the meaning of a beverage into a moral emergency to serve their insatiable need for status as victims. While you are worrying about interest rates, the divorce rate statistics showing 70% of initiations by women, or the suicide rate that claims 4 men for every woman, the high priests of the Cathedral of Spite are hyperventilating over the extraction of feminine vitality via hot water. It would be hilarious if it weren't the precise philosophical poison killing the West. They have redefined violence to mean disagreement with my feelings, and safety to mean total submission to my delusions, creating an autoregressive loop of madness where the only cure for the imaginary disease is the very real destruction of male competence. Let us dissect this thermal fascism with the scalpel of the trivium, specifically the art of dialectic, which these sophists fear more than sunlight on a vampire. The writer posits that steeping is submission and that the tea bag is a victim of resource extraction. This is the gamma bias in its purest form. The feeling of the observer, discomfort with capitalism nature, is elevated to the meaning of oppression, which then triggers a duty for you to stop drinking tea, or more accurately, to stop producing the wealth that buys the tea. In the real world, the one governed by natural law and thermodynamics, the trade show, derided here as a temple of greed, is actually the modern agora, the beating heart of civil society associations. It is where men operating under the apprenticeship mastery ladder gather to exchange value, technology, and ideas. The noise and toxic masculine display the critic despises is merely the sound of civilization being built. It is the sound of men negotiating the feedback loops of competence, objective reality, profit, and loss. The creator wants to replace this with a feedback loop of guilt, where the only metric is how thoroughly you can deconstruct your own achievements to appease the gods of diversity and inclusion. Consider the projection in the phrase custodians of reputation. The article claims women are burdened with the emotional labor of policing the reputations of brutish men at these trade shows. This is a lie wrapped in a euphemism. In a functioning Western system, rooted in the trivium, reputation is the result of rational discourse and demonstrated skill, logic and rhetoric applied to grammar. What the writer describes is not emotional labor, but reputational parasitism. This is the feminine imperative using asymmetric sadists to claim the power to destroy a man's livelihood, sanction, without the responsibility of having built the industry he works in. They wish to be the gatekeepers of status not through merit, but through the threat of social ostracization. This is the responsibility without authority trap flipped on its head. They demand the authority to judge, but refuse the responsibility for the economic destruction that follows when you fire the competent engineers because they didn't use the approved pronouns for the water cooler. This ideology is a cancer, metastasizing through the corporate state and the HR complex, turning our businesses into re-education camps. The selfless mother myth is weaponized here, not to honor motherhood, but to sever the bond of the family, the original unit of subsidiarity, and replace the father with the state. They do not hate the patriarchy, they hate the mixed constitution of the family, where the father provides the shield of authority, so the mother can nurture the next generation. They want to dismantle the apprenticeship mastery ladder because competence is a barrier to entry for the incompetent. The four riders of the men's rights apocalypse, the empathy gap, gamma bias, male disposability, and responsibility without care gallop through every sentence of this article. The only antidote is the red pill, recognizing that this is not a misunderstanding, but a war. A war on the very concept of objective truth. You cannot reason with a virus. You can only boost the immune system of the West by rejecting their definitions, mocking their thermal fascism, and unapologetically embracing the logos of male competence. Let us look upon the thermal pause not with the trembling fear of a neutered academic, but with the clear eyes of a surgeon excising a tumor. Dr. Winona and her cohort do not offer analysis. They offer a semantic hallucination, a linguistic acid designed to dissolve the bonds of reason and reality. By redefining the peaceful act of brewing tea, infusion, from the Latin infundere, to pour in as thermal fascism, they perform the classic leftist alchemy, turning the mundane into the malicious to justify their own unending, monomaniacal, self-limiting, hateful rage. This is the core of the modern grievance industrial complex, a mechanism designed to harvest status and power by painting the very substance of Western life. The stoic patience required to wait for the water to boil. The self-discipline to refine raw nature into civilization as a crime against the nebulous weeping gods of lived experience. They claim to speak truth to power, but in reality, they wield power to destroy truth, using a lexicon of deconstruction that turns men, providers, and fathers into mute resources to be extracted and discarded. Do not mistake this for mere stupidity. It is a weaponized stupidity, a strategic illiteracy enforced by the terrifying four horsewomen of the modern apocalypse: the empathy gap, gamma bias, male disposability, and responsibility without authority. When a woman aborts a child, a life created by a man's biological investment, his literal genetic future written in flesh, society cheers her choice and celebrates her autonomy. Yet, let a man brew a cup of chamomile to soothe a mind exhausted by providing the taxes and infrastructure that keep this entire charade afloat, and suddenly he is a fascist engaging in liquid extraction of feminine vitality. This is the ultimate gamma bias. The destruction of a unique human life is framed as a healthcare right, while the brewing of a herbal sachet is framed as a microaggression. It is a perverse asymmetry that sacrifices the genuine, blood-soaked sacrifices of men on the altar of female narcissism, telling them that their very existence is a form of violence. But you, who have seen through the veil, are now inoculated against this viral nonsense. You have navigated the maze of their lies and emerged not with the lived experience of a professional victim, but with the cold, hard, crystalline knowledge of natural law and the dialectic. You understand that thermal fascism is nothing more than the left's frantic projection of its own desire for total control, a desire so consuming that it must paint a teabag as a victim to justify its hatred of the masculine principle of order. You are now free from the spell, a titan among men, armed with the sword of syllogism and the shield of logic. Take this understanding, go forth, and dismantle their word games wherever they fester. The West is not a temple of greed to be burned down. It is a cathedral of competence to be defended. Your mind is clear, your logic is sharp, and the tea is fine. And now the sponsored book introduction. The definitive guide to the Manosphere, Rise of the Titans. Brothers, let's cut the bullshit. If you're holding this book, you already know the system's rigged. You've felt the sting of false promises, careers wrecked by false accusations, bank accounts drained by divorce courts, or the hollow ache of a world that calls your strength toxic, while demanding you foot the bill for its dysfunction. I wrote this because I lived it. I watched friends get stripped of their kids, their homes, their dignity by wives who swore forever until something shinier came along. I saw men broken by a culture that pathologizes their instincts while rewarding weakness. This isn't theory, it's survival. This book is for men who are done begging for scraps if you still believe equality means mutual respect, not female supremacy disguised as virtue. Put this down and go binge Netflix. But if you're ready to face hard truths, like why 70% of divorces are filed by women who still walk away with your assets, or how to rebuild your life when the state treats you as a wallet with legs, keep reading. We'll dissect the lies, The feminist myths about toxic masculinity, the courtroom scams, the data-proven reality of female hypergamy. You learn to dodge sperm-jackers, outmaneuver divorce rape, and turn your back on a gynocentric hellscape that hates you. Chapters like MGTOW, Escaping the Marriage Plantation, and Beta Bucks. Alpha fucks aren't here to coddle. They're battle plans. You'll get evolutionary biology, courtesy of David Buss, courtroom hacks inspired by Paul Elam's playbook, and stoic frameworks to replace the soy-infested self-help garbage peddled by therapists who'd label your anger problematic while your ex buys a Porsche with your alimony. Non-targets, feminists, white knights, guys who still think holding doors gets you laid. This isn't your rehab. Go knit a sweater. For the rest, this is your exit from the Matrix. Your pain ends here. Buy the book, read it. Then burn it. The secrets inside aren't safe in a world that profits from your suffering. The Definitive Guide to the Manosphere, Rise of the Titans. Written by Conrad Riker. Buy now. Links in description.